Right. Now we have one problem. Vi har inte men jag får göra så här på det sättet. Just a little technical issue.
We can see like
Yeah.
on the presentation mode, I think, yeah.
Right. So I guess you see now this precious and beautiful planet
Yeah, we can see it.
of ours. This is a planet that right now it's ruled by mankind. And that means that we all together have a shared custody of this planet. But unfortunately, too many of us are not really taking this custody seriously. So we have a planet in terrible shape, I'm afraid to say. We can see that in this kind of diagrams. We are supposed to stay within the white border, but we have more and more parameters where we have red warning lights ticking, and you are, of course, aware of this. And you're also aware of this tendency of ours to just see the most immediate. This image was made when the pandemic was our main problem. Used to say COVID-19 in the first wave. So that's what we saw then. We might see a little bit of the threat of recession, but we have to see all the waves at the same time coming forward to us. A large part of this has to do with the forests. The forests are vital for the global climate. In many parts of the world, they regulate the temperature and humidity, and the forests are part of our global climate. They create much of the clouds, giving farmers rain on their fields. And they are home to countless species of life. They capture inconceivable quantities of carbon, and they provide a wide range of products for the human share of the ecology, what we usually call the economy. Preserving and restoring global forests is of vital importance to humanity. In many parts of the world, the forests are threatened, disappeared, or degraded, like this one. So the forests are often replaced by other kind of land use. Could be farming, could be cattle ranches, could be plantations like this one in Indonesia, or simply urbanization. From the original forest that we had on the planet, approximately 1/3 is lost permanently, and another third is seriously degraded. But still, they are have a great impact. And just to take some numbers, our atmosphere contains a lot of gases. One of them is carbon dioxide. There is approximately 3,200 gigatons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But 750 of these gigatons are circulated naturally in our ecosystems. Approximately 180 of those gigatons is the total uptake in our forests. And the forests also give away almost as much as they are taking up. So if we see at the human impact on those enormous figures, the 750 gigatons of carbon that is circulated, we add approximately 40 gigatons extra every year. But there is a spare capacity in nature taking up approximately half of this. But we are adding to our atmosphere which is already containing more carbon dioxide than most species on our planet have ever seen in their existence. So we have more and more carbon in the atmosphere. A lot of this carbon is related to the construction and to the built environment. Cement production alone counts for approximately 2.5 gigatons of carbon dioxide annually. This is about 8% of the global emissions. And the total steel production is almost as much, although not all is construction related. But if we substitute all the concrete used globally, we will need something, and this is a very rough number, something like 5 gigatons of carbon dioxide transformed through the plants into wood and other materials that we can use in construction. So this is 5 gigatons out of the 180 that is sequestered every year. That's 2 to 3%. So even if we have lost a lot of our forest, we still have about 4 billion hectares globally. This is approximately 32% of the total land mass. Most of this, 45%, are in tropical regions, rainforests or dry forests, and the rest is subtropical, tempered, or boreal forests. And of course, the boreal forests are growing in a much slower pace than the tropical forests. And still, it's the boreal forests and the temperate forests that we are using most for the international trade of timber. And this outlooks in Europe. There's still a lot of forest here, and fortunately, the amount of trees has been growing if we look at Europe as such. And this is an image showing how we use the forest that we harvest. And of course, you can see that it's a small portion of this that is actually long-lived products. And to make it a bit easier for you, it's not exactly the same numbers. But this is for Scandinavian circumstances, and I think they're also a bit exaggerated. It's less than 18% of what we harvest in the forest that is actually long-lived products in the end. Half of it, or more than that, is fuel, and worldwide it's a much larger share that goes to fuel. We have about 1/3 going to paper and pulp, and a very small portion goes to other kinds of products. So the potential to use more for long-lived products like buildings is huge. The system we humans have created to handle our scarce and limited resources, our share of the ecology, it's called the economy. And we have to use this economy and to bring it to work together with all the other parts of the ecology. So we will only be able to save and restore our forests if we give forests a higher value than other land uses and learn how to use the forest as a sustainable base for large parts of our circular economy. One component in this is to radically increase the global demand for timber in construction. But we also have to defend the close to natural forests to learn how to get an increased yield without disturbing the other ecosystems, utilizing the same forests. Plantations might be good for the carbon balance, but this might not even be our biggest problem, as you saw in the waves before. Sequestration and substitution through forests or plantations and storage as buildings is by far the cheapest method for CCS, carbon capture and storage. So if we talk about the wood solution, And we have to go from a situation where we now have degraded forests and concrete cities to a situation where the forests and the built environment are using each other and taking support in each other to create a better world. And now Jimmy is going to take over and tell you a bit more how that is going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Staffan, for this framing of the topic, the wood solution. I will continue to go into some more details on how we can reach there and what kind of challenges we must solve. When we talk about the forest, as Staffan also has described, we have a system that we must handle with care. The forest is a part of the planet, and the combination of a technical system and the social system. We have a technical system where we use the forest both in the industrial perspective, and we use them for building things and products of different kinds. And we have a social system where the forest must exist together with different species of both animals and plants, and also the human. I don't know if there is any other raw material we take from our planets that is produced as in the same time as it should be accessible for the humans that like to walk in the forest and use the forest for different kind of values. So there is a large challenge there, and also not very strange that some conflicts often occurs. We should also have in mind that when we plan to use the forest or the trees for different kind of purposes for mankind, this was not the original way or the nature sort of planned for the use of the forest. The trees are built based on the photosynthesis with moisture and sun as energy and related sources. And thereby the tree is formed in a certain way. Quite clever way, actually. So when the tree grows, the tree trunk have some different kind of purposes. It should keep the tree alive. It should support the crown to stimulate the important photosynthesis. It should transport mineral solution from the roots up to the crown and store manufactured food, and so on. And when the tree eventually dies, that will happen, the tree have the purpose to stimulate the fast degrading process, which is not normally the way we want to use the tree after we fell it and use it for different kind of products. We normally want these products to stay in use as long as possible. So the forest have many values. It contains a lot of variation, hopefully, and we can, by certain management methods, stimulate those kind of variations to stimulate different kind of species and both plants and animals to like the forest in different kind of ways. But we can also treat it bad and make it not containing that many species and so on. That's our options we have and how we manage the forest. The values are both on the timber products, but also in the standing forest that the people like to visit the forest and be in the forest, which creates both values when the tree grows and when we use it for products. Also in the forest, there are a number of species that we like to use for other purposes, like mushrooms, like berries, and so on. And there is an estimate of 5.8 billion people that use what we call the non-timber forest products for their daily life as food and different kind of uses. And about 50% of the global population use these wild gathered species. And 70% of the world's poor rely on these wild species for different kind of purposes. So not to forget about the use and values of the standing forest. When we use the forest as a wood material, we do it because of different reasons. When we go through the literature and research, you can find the reasons to be the availability, first of all. Most part of the world contains some kind of forest where you can use the material. It's also easy to shape. You don't need very complicated tools to start working with a piece of wood to do something, as you also see in the picture. It also has properties that are very beneficial. It has low weight in relation to strength and stiffness. Normally, wood surfaces are considered as aesthetically and tactile appealing. There is a certain feeling when you touch a wood surface that is hard to describe and compare to other materials. And it's friendly to nature, environmentally friendly, but with some question signs related to how you treat the forest and how you treat the material in its use. The global use of roundwood is a bit different to if you look at, for example, Sweden and Europe as a whole. Around half of the volume's harvested wood is used for fuel woods. And this is then related to where in the world you are, where the blue countries here are the most wood removal from the forest is actually used for direct energy purposes, while that looks differently in some other countries. Forest and wood is a very beneficial energy resource and used, of course, worldwide for this purpose. And related to why we used wood, the availability question is, of course, crucial here. And the relation to that is quite easily is converted into energy. So you don't need very complicated tools to do that. You need something to maybe the wood starts to burn, more or less. And that means that this energy resource is very important from in different ways. But of course, how you treat the material when it burns is related to also what kind of climate footprint you will get from it. The wood we use for different kind of products is normally, from a European perspective, called the harvested wood products, or the HWPs. Very important then, as Staffan described, to form a storage pool of the wood-based carbon, and also substituting other materials that can be more damaging to the nature. Staffan showed a picture of how the forest is converted into different kind of products. It's also important to see in this perspective that normally the different kind of parts of the tree is used for different kind of uses, where most of the saw logs comes from the stem of the tree. Fuel wood normally comes from the branches as a start, and the tops, and the pulpwood comes from the smaller parts of the log or the tree. So in this way, we sort of use the whole tree, even though the stumps normally stays in the ground. Also, depending on the species, there are different kind of qualities of the tree within the stem. So the parts closer to the centerpieces in some species are the strongest one and best used for construction purposes. And the outer parts has, in that case, lower qualities, but in other species, it's the other way around. So the outer part of the log is more important or has a higher value than the inner part. So the wood used as sawn wood or wood-based products can be used for building purposes and create the very long-lasting products and store a lot of carbon. There are also other ways of doing this. For example, using the wood for energy, but keep some parts as, for example, biochar. Or when we use wood for interior purposes as furniture and so on, we also create a carbon pool. In this way, we have been working for quite long. We have a raw material that we take from the forest. We make some kind of processing with it. We assemble it to a product and we consume that product, and then eventually we bring it back to nature, and in that case normally as energy, but it's also still so that some material, or quite a lot, also end up as landfill or reclamation. This is of course also something that you have to think about for the future. How can we close this loop and have a system that brings the product or the material back and use it as products for a longer time by some kind of circular perspectives. This can be done in different ways, and of course it is important to follow some kind of stepwise progression in how we work to preventing this kind of waste creation, to reuse the material, to remanufacture material, or reuse the materials. In Sweden, when we look at how the wood is used, and in that case the material that goes related to the sawmill industry in specific, we can see that around 23% of the material is used for buildings. We have 70% used for packaging. We have 3% used for furniture, 7% for other construction, 7% for agricultural sector, and 37% for DIY sector. And you can think about these long life perspectives, what products are for long life here. Of course, the buildings are considered to be fairly long-lived. The DIY sector, where we, for example, find materials used for decking and such things, are also fairly long-lived, but not necessarily very environmentally friendly. Furniture, probably quite long-lasting, while this 14% for other construction and agricultural sector is most likely not that long-lived. So there, from the 18% that was used for the sawmill perspectives in Staffan's picture, we can then directly, I think, remove some 14% here. When we use wood, we have some challenges. As described initially here, the trunk of the tree was not designed for us to use it for products. It was designed to support the growth of the tree. and thereby the trunk of the tree is constructed in some specific way. First of all, it is round, and normally we want to create a square piece of wood to make it easier to use it. And that is, of course, a challenge when it concerns that we have a lot of waste material here that we have to handle in some way. It's also so that the stem contains a lot of different kind of qualities of the wood related to how the tree grows. We have a centerpiece that we often call heartwood that normally have some different and often better properties than the outer part of the wood. Closer to the pith, the middle part of the tree, we have what we call juvenile wood, where the tree grows quite fast in its young age, meaning that this material has some different properties. It moves with moisture quite a lot more than the rest of the tree, and that's why most often that the square wood pieces have some twist or deformed shape of different kinds. And something specific happens when you fell the tree and let it dry. When the moisture that is within the tree disappears, the wood moves and normally it cracks. And that is, of course, a challenge when you use it. So wood interacts with its environment in different ways. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But something you have to consider when you use wood in construction. Coming back to this circularity, circular perspective of wood use, we have today not very many systems that supports this. We, first of all, need the wood for energy. And there are actors that wants to pay for having this material to burn it and give energy to the people. In the second phase, you have often mixed materials, making it difficult to circulate it. So this is a linear system that we have built that not support this circularity that most likely is necessary for the future. To create this, we need some kind of interaction or increased interaction within the value chains, where you see the benefit of having material reuse in different kinds, and also connecting this material reuse to an information source, that you keep an information chain from the forest to the product and keeping that in a circular as well. A challenge we have in the forest is that global level, the forest amount is decreasing. We have an ongoing deforestation, and on an average from 2015 to 2025, 4 million hectares per year of forest disappears in the world. It is converted to other land uses. And this is then related to specific areas in the world. And South America and Africa is the main problematic areas today, and also in this Oceania. That means that there are other aspects that, or other uses that at the moment then are more important than the forest. And about 80% of the deforestation is then related to agriculture, that you need this land to create food, both for growing things, but also for pasture and palm oil plantations. And this is, of course, a challenge that we must handle. Some deforestation also occurs because you need to build things and infrastructure, and also related to forest fires, insects infestation, and diseases that occurs in the forest, both locally and globally. Why do we have these challenges? First of all, we have basic needs from people needing food and people needing income related to the land use. And that often then connects to poverty, that people need to handle this in the short term and don't have the possibility to see it from a long-term perspective. We also have, in many cases, inefficient heating and cooking, meaning that we need to consume the wood for that kind of purposes. We also have challenges related to illegal logging, that you harvest the wood without permission, and related then to these local and global environmental factors. If you look specifically in South America, we have some areas, one part where we have a decrease of the forest and some other parts where where the forest area actually are increasing. However, then related then to that we replant forest and make that as plantages of forest of different kinds, making this to be a bit of a monoculture related to how the forest looked before. There is also a strong connection between this illegal logging and the corruption of this connected to these kind of countries, which is important to remember that the illegal logging and also how we deforest the planet is mostly related to other issues than the actual value or use of the forest. The mentioned palm oil, this seems to be some kind of magic product that you can use for more or less everything, but it is very problematic since its growing relies on ground that most is often or is very good when the rainforest has been growing there before, even though certified plantations are available. The trade flow of lumber in the world looks something like this. We have, the wood industry is a global business and wood is shipped around the world, where Europe is an important producer of wood that is shipped to other parts of the world. The largest stream of export of wood is between Canada and the USA. And since this picture is from 2025, we have a lot of wood going from Russia to China. That, of course, looked differently before the war, where also Russia exported to a lot of other countries. So, for the future, what to expect? We believe that increasing wood in use in buildings is important to have the possibility to create the storage of carbon, but of course also that wood cities is positive from many other perspectives. You like to live and act together with wood. From the EU perspective, we have a lot of regulations and things connecting to how we can increase how we build with wood, but also how we support actions related to deforestation, that we want to keep track of the forest through the EUDR perspective, for example. We are introducing digital product passport that also can support that you know the origin of the materials, but also where the products come from. We also start to measure how much CO2 a production process use, and from a product perspective, and for example in the building perspective, we can it will be interesting to see what that will happen to that in the future. And the mentioned new European Bauhaus perspective is interesting from the perspective that we think of buildings and the cities in a holistic perspective, that we connect aspects of production, of use, and a beautiful perspective. And that was my last picture. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much for this interesting lecture. It was very inspiring. And are there any questions or comments or I don't know, suggestion from local your local situation or scenario?
Hello, my name is Naledi Samosa from South Africa, and I'm a psychology student. So I'd like to ask if we have many sustainable materials already, so why do people still struggle to adopt them in everyday life? Because at the beginning of this lecture, it was mentioned that we saw our beautiful planet, and then that we, the people, are actually part of the problem why we're not, protecting it in some way. So I would like to understand from the behavior perspective of our actions as individuals who live on this earth, like why do we struggle to adopt, sustainable ways to protect, these woods and our trees?
Yeah, I think it's the shared custody that is the problem. I mean, we have the same problem with water, with air, and with everything, where you can't say that this is mine and this is yours. And there is a lot of research on this. I think woman got the Nobel Prize in economy. Well, it's not a real Nobel Prize, but it's called like that. A few years ago with research on exactly this. Why do we not take care of what we own together in a better way? And I'm sorry, but I don't have a good answer to that question.
Okay, it makes perfect sense. At least there is a question to it. There should be some ongoing research, especially in our fields of psychology, as to ways we can make people aware and make them be like, for them to adopt. And because I feel like it goes as much as benefiting and that's it. Goes as much as benefiting and that's it. But if there is like awareness and more research, and especially in the people in the Department of Psychology where we understand human behavior, then if there is a problem, there should be a solution to come. Thank you very much for the knowledge.
Yeah, and thanks for pointing out this aspect, because I think it's crucial. And I think that this is one of the main challenges for politics, to make our system work in favor of our future and not in favor of the guys that want to take advantage of the present on
True.
behalf of the future.
True.
So I think it's our responsibility also to choose the right politicians.
100% true.
Very good question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Are there any other question?
But I just wanted to once again point out the relationship between different aspects in this. And my background is from construction. I've been working with that all my life. And it took many years of professional work before I realized how important construction is as a driving force for better forests. And I mean, in different parts of the world, you have different challenges. You're on different levels with different local problems. The problems we have here is in how we do forestry. And I think it's for our challenge is that we need to have a forestry that is also better in biodiversity. And I see directly how it is the financing of construction and the choices that you do when you work with construction that also decides which material are you using, where does it come from, how was it produced. And I don't know where you guys are in your professional lives or where you will be, but I think an understanding of the systems, how they are interconnected, and the active choice to try to be part of the solution in the choices that you do in your professional life. I think that is also a crucial part of this.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I will see tomorrow at the second lecture, the Wood Solution 2, Timber Buildings for Wellbeing and Climate Resilience, with Professor Ambrose Dodu, sorry, of Linnaeus University.
Yes.
So thank you very much. It was very interesting and very inspiring. And we'll see tomorrow at same time, 10 a.m.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Have
thank you.
a nice day. Bye-bye. Goodbye.